So, hello. Welcome to the call for July. Hope you're enjoying the summer, which seems to have sort of kicked in by now. But as I said earlier, it's pretty cold where I am today. I don't think we've got anybody who on the call whose name I don't know. So my usual bit about who I am, I'm not going to do. So, yeah, welcome to the call. It is, as last month was, about the impact of the general election on our work. So obviously now that's just 2 days away and now. So building on last month's discussion with Vinny on what new MPs will be up to and how this will affect our campaigning, we're going to be further discussing some of the tactics that you might want to use in your campaigning over the next couple of months, as well as some of the campaigns that we're planning to run and how we might need to adapt those to meet the kind of new political reality. Um, so before we go into that, I'll just do the usual housekeeping messages. Do please keep yourself muted during the call, except when you're asking a question. Um, if you can use the chat box, I've turned on closed captions, so if you want to enable those, you should be able to do so using the Zoom toolbar. And as always, we're recording the call. So if you don't want to appear, please just turn your video off. Does anyone want to say hello?
Yes, hello to everyone. Hello to everybody.
I
Abbas
hear
from
that.
Cardiff, yeah. Hi. So I think
Hello.
all
And welcome, Florence, who I think has just joined. Hi. Okay, so we'll do the usual thing. We'll keep the call open after the formal end of the meeting at 9 for anyone who wants to stay and chat informally. Um, since our last call, we've now seen what the main political parties have to say about international development in their manifestos. Um, so when we talked about this last month, I think we only had the Liberal Democrat manifesto to share. So we're going to look at all of them. Please note that the comments I'm about to make are in the context of this private conversation with you about campaigning on international development. It's important, obviously, that results staff and volunteers aren't allowed by Charity Commission and election rules to publicly compare policies in a way that would enable a reasonable person to assume we're favouring a particular party or candidate. So we're definitely not doing that. Obviously, in our personal lives, we can make our own judgments. But it's important that we are all aware of what to expect as official party policy when MPs of all the political parties are re-elected in just a couple of days now. So, with that said, the Labour Party manifesto, I don't know if some of you will have seen these, perhaps some of you won't, so bear with me. The Labour Party manifesto their section on international relations is on security and economic development, with very few commitments. And while they do commit to re-establishing our aid spending to 0.7% of the UK's gross national income, or GNI, there's no criteria or timeline for how that will happen. The Conservative Party manifesto calls for overseas aid to be explicitly in the UK's national interest, so no change there. It also retains the commitment to 0.7%, but also only as fiscal circumstances allow. So again, the same line that they've been holding for some time now. The Liberal Democrat manifesto expresses the importance of focusing the UK's aid spending on poverty reduction. I think it's the only one that says that. Working in respectful partnerships with other countries, and to increase the proportion of aid spent on education to 15% of the ODA budget. And it also specifically mentions the challenges of food crises and malnutrition. It mentions reversing the aid cuts, but again, giving no detail on the exact spending level that they're aiming at. The SNP manifesto commits to immediately restoring UK aid spending to 0.7. Of the parties with very few MPs in the last parliament, it's notable that the Green Party, who previously had an MP where we have results campaigners, or had, in Brighton, are planning to increase ODA to 1% of gross national income by 2033 and climate finance to 1.5% by the same date. As we have at least one results campaigner in Wales, thank you, Abbas, we should mention that Plaid Cymru also commits to reinstating aid spending to 0.7% of gross national income. If you want to find out about the other parties with few or no MPs in the last parliament, then I'm sure you can Google them. However, the international development umbrella organisation BOND, which many of you are familiar with, has produced a handy article which links to all the party manifestos. I'm going to share that in the chat. And it basically contains what I've said, but a bit more as well. Let's just put that in the chat now before I forget. And it includes also commitment on climate. Bond has also, and I think we've shared this previously, written its own manifesto, which basically sets out the concerns of international development NGOs broadly, and we've basically at results we would agree with that. They have since produced a nice summary of those concerns, and again, I'm just going to link to that in the chat. So the first link I shared was the Bond review of manifestos, and the second link is their sort of what we would like to see, I suppose you might want to put it that way. In a few minutes, our guest speaker, who I've seen just arrived, will cover what this could mean for building relationships with MPs of all parties. So as we do this, we need to be mindful of the platforms that they have all stood on in order to enter Parliament and to which they are officially committed. So of course that will have an impact on what we can reasonably ask them to do. And lastly, for this sort of this part of the call, just looking at sort of things that relate to our work in politics, we've previously mentioned I can't remember which was last time or the time before, but at some point this year, we will be asking you to campaign on access to vaccinations around the world. And obviously, as many of you know, that was severely set back by COVID-19. And this year has been referred to as the big catch up by the vaccination community. Now, that catch up on the sort of the lost vaccinations that we should have been doing can only happen with sufficient investment. And 2 weeks ago, on the 20th of June, Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, introduced what it's calling its investment opportunity. These documents come out regularly in advance of a call for money, and it calls for countries to fund Gavi for the period 2026 to 30 to the tune of an additional $9 billion US dollars. So we've worked on Gavi before. We were successful in getting a good UK contribution to the funding pot for 2021 to 2025, I think it was. And this is the next one. So those of you with longer memories will think, okay, time for Gavi again. And this time it's 9 billion globally they're looking for. We don't know what they're asking the UK, what we want the UK to contribute of that 9. I'll include a link to a a long but good document. So this is what I call the investment opportunity that Gavi have produced. I'll include the link to that in the chat, and I'll also include a link to the World Health Organization's website, which has an explanation of this thing that I just referred to called the big catch up. And hopefully, yeah, they've just come out in the chat. So what is going to happen is that the French government this time is hosting the replenishment conference in Paris, we presume, which will ask commitments from international donors later in the year. Now, because of the French elections, obviously that's thrown sand in the works, and a lot of the details on this are still uncertain. When we have a good idea of the sum of money we're going to be thinking as sort of civil society organizations that work together on this, and what we think is a reasonable sum of money to expect the UK to contribute, given its previous contributions, we'll be asking you to take part in our usual advocacy efforts, in this case to immunise children around the world. So watch this space. We're getting ready to ask the UK government to step up to the mark, basically, but it's not quite ready yet. So I'm going to now move on to the usual section where we do a roundup of what you've been doing around the UK. And I want to start with a huge thank you to everybody for the campaign actions you've been doing this month. First of all, we've seen a good few letters sent to prospective parliamentary candidates asking for their views on international development issues, and basically to show that there's support for this in the constituency. So examples that I've seen, I know of letters and emails sent in Poole, Harlow, South Cambridgeshire, Edinburgh. I'm sure there's more that I've missed, but a big thank you to everyone who shared with us that they've taken action. And we'd love to hear more. In addition, several of you have actually been able to attend local public meetings or hustings to hear from your candidates directly. Whilst a few of you have reported not being able to get your question asked, which is quite understandable, there's lots of people pitch in. There are a few people who reported that they were able to speak personally to some of the candidates after the event, which is also a really excellent way of making yourselves known and obviously getting your concerns known to them. So well done to Corinne for attending a hustings meeting in Hertford and Stortford recently, Jill in Sutton and Cheam, Tony in South Cambridgeshire, Florence in Chelmsford. Would anyone else who's been able to take action like to share what they did right now? Or would any of those people I've mentioned just like to share how their action went? So just open up your microphones and let us know what's going on. Florence, go for it.
Yeah, for me, I'm not taking any action now. I really don't know what to do because I know all the sorry, what do you call them? The candidate, yeah, they're all busy at the moment, right? So I assume that we will write to them after, like we find out who is the MP. So I would like to learn, know what should we write to them. Thank you.
Yeah, firstly, thank you for going along to the hustings that I know you went to in your constituency. That's exactly what we're suggesting for July, and we're going to come to that a little bit later in the call. We've got 2 days left, haven't we, of these people being candidates, so not much time now. Anybody else?
Well, yeah, I just want to say, like right at the beginning of this all kicking off, I wrote to all the prospective candidates, not making a request so much as asking for their commitment to ending hunger and to climate change, because I now have a dual commitment. And sadly, I only got one reply. That was from the Labour candidate, who's not a bad fellow as far as I can tell. But rather than talk about his commitment as I requested, he talked about his party, which he said he will follow what the party says, basically. So none of the candidates were willing to make a commitment at this point. I think it's very important, personally, to know that whoever represents me in Parliament is personally committed. This was certainly true of my previous MP, Sir Alan Hazelhurst. He was committed and extremely restricted in what he could do by his role. He was the Deputy Speaker, and there are some rules, stuff that prevent him from taking certain actions that we might have requested as his constituent. However, I would much rather have a candidate who is shackled and committed than a candidate who is not committed and his party lets him do whatever he wants, or they have a relationship based on party lines. Because I believe, as a foundation for results work, is that the way to end global hunger and poverty is to make it good politics for politicians to do that. In other words, they are the key, or a very important key in getting the job done. So I would rather have a restricted, committed representative than an unrestricted, uncommitted representative. And that's my bit for today. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Couldn't agree more. And I guess it's part of our job, isn't it, to build that relationship, to get them feel that they are comfortable expressing a personal view, expressing a personal relationship, which maybe some of them aren't kind of there yet. Probably a lot of them aren't there yet. Anybody else got a comment
Oh,
on?
sorry, I
Oh.
just want to add a PS, taking up time. When Sir Alan Hazelhurst was my representative, we did a lot of actions, and he did some of our requests, and he did some actions on his own that were in line with results ideals. However, one particular time I went to visit him in his office, and I asked him to make a request, I think a written request or oral, something like that. And he said he couldn't do it because he was a deputy speaker. And I challenged him. I said, are you really committed to ending hunger? And he went berserk. He started waving his arms about and saying, of course I'm committed to ending hunger. Of course I want to stop, all these children dying. Of course I do, but I'm restricted. I prefer that kind of response than a kind of yes man type response.
Something a bit human. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pete. So yeah, I just want to take a second out to welcome Akuil. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing your name right. Welcome. Just in the chat there, you've said you're invited by Abbas, and you're both City of Sanctuary ambassadors in Wales. So really wanted to welcome you to the call. Thank you for joining us as well. Say hello if you'd like to. Not compulsory.
He's done it in the chat.
You have said hello in the chat. Anyone else want to just share their experience?
Hello, yes.
Hello, welcome.
Hi, thank you everyone. And thank you so much, Navid. Did I pronounce it well?
You did.
Oh, thank you. So my name is Achil. It's Cha. So thank you so much. I'm really happy to be part of this meeting. And I was invited by my good friend Abbas to join the meeting. And I'm so sorry for joining late because I was busy. I just came home now. And I'm really here ready to learn. Before I could start sharing anything, I just want to learn. And I hope after learning something, I'll be able to share.
Thank you. Well, welcome again. And yeah, so we're talking about obviously the general election and our parliamentary candidates, one of whom in each constituency will shortly be an MP, and how our relationship with these people can influence what the UK does on international development. So I hope you'll find this call useful. Would anyone else like to share their recent experience or not so recent of getting in touch with parliamentary candidates?
I will.
Kathy. Oh, sorry, Jill. Kathy, I don't know who was first.
You go, Jill.
Okay. I went to the hustings in the new constituency that I'm in, and it was a very different thing. And they chose the questions based on the number of people that had written in about it, which meant that international development didn't get a mention because not enough people had written in. And there was a strong bias in favour of moral questions and also local politics. It's a London borough, and ULEZ came up, and transport and new hospital and all that sort of thing. And I just felt that we were in a very different place now than pre-COVID. I didn't get that sense that, and this was at the churches together, so it should have been church people that were doing it, but there obviously wasn't enough people wrote in questions about international development issues that swayed it, So I think we're going to have to take notice of that. The second thing is that I'm visiting my good friend Pete in Bishop Stortford, and near Stortford, and I went into Stortford, and there was Julie Marson, who's our previous MP, doing a little film on the corner of the street. And so I shouted out to her, and she gave me a big hug and greeted me like a long lost friend. And she said, I haven't seen you for ages. And I said I'd moved, and why. And but I said, Corin's still here. and I said she'll be getting in touch. Oh, she said, do get in touch, you know, if you're elected, you know, after the election. So, and she posed for a photograph as well. So that's good anyway.
It's a wonderful, I mean, I know you've been contacting her for quite a few years now, and it's just a brilliant testament to how you can build up a relationship from essentially zero, where many of us are now, through to getting them to recognize you. So that's brilliant. A really great, lovely story. Thank you for sharing it. Kathy, and then I see Abbas, you've got your hand up as well. Kathy, do you want to go first?
Just briefly, one thing that I should say is that I was asked by my MP to endorse his standing again, and because I thought he was very good on international development issues, I was happy to do that in a personal capacity. But I've since heard, I haven't seen, but on the leaflet that he has produced, my quote about "It's great to hear a voice of reason in Westminster talking about international development issues." So he's actually chosen to put international development issues onto his leaflet. But actually, I was also at an Amnesty human rights hustings, and his main opposition, it's going to be a close run thing, is a candidate from the Labour Party, Chris Murray, who has worked in international development in his previous existence. So whether we get Labour or we get SNP, we will have someone in our constituency who will, and that those are the two likely people. They probably will be committed to international development issues. Whether they're effective in changing policy is another matter. But the great thing about going to a hustings that was about human rights issues was there was plenty of stuff on international development, and the Tories didn't send a candidate along. They also didn't send a candidate to the climate change hustings that I attended. So I think the Tories have given up Scotland, which I hope that they'll give up the rest of Britain as well. So sorry, not what I'm supposed to say.
No, you know, you're supposed to say what you want to say.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy. Abbas, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Naveed. Just first, I would like to say welcome to our new members, especially Arch from Swansea. And I would like to thank you very much about your suggestion to take action after the election. So congratulate our new MB. So I would like really to thank you about the sharing this and how we can congratulate our new MB, and definitely on Friday we will start doing this. So because this is very important for us, yeah. And I've been happy because I helped my MB to knock the doors in Cardiff, yeah, to ask to take action in Thursday to ask the people to go to election. So I will be very happy to congratulate the new MB in my area. Thank you.
Thanks, Abbas. That's a great endorsement of our action. We're going to talk about it a bit later. We're going to start that in just a few minutes. So hopefully we'll dive in to why that's important. I really think it's super important, but we'll hear more. So look, we've thank you to everybody who's taken action. If any of you have got still an opportunity to interact with your parliamentary candidates in the next 24 hours, 48 hours, not long now, please do. I want to share with you in the chat a blog post that Jill put together to share what it's good sort of top tips for going to these hustings meetings. I'll just put that in the chat. It's definitely worth a read. It shares her experience and gives some really great tips, and hopefully if you haven't seen it already, it's just really great piece. So thank you, Jill, for putting that together. So I really enjoyed seeing some of you in person last month at our summer gathering in London. I hope those of you who made it found it useful and interesting, and a massive thank you for joining us. But it was just so lovely to see everybody in person. And as well as long-standing members of the network, we had some newer campaigners and friends from other campaigning networks, including the One Campaign, the Borgen Project, which I think was new to some of us, and Action for Global Health. I'm just going to share a link to our social media post for some pictures. So those of you who are there can recap it, and those who weren't can have a little look. And as well as being an important moment to discuss the challenges that we're facing in fighting poverty and oppression around the world, it was also just, as I said, brilliant to spend time together. I was particularly happy to see the online group able to meet each other for the very first time. That was so lovely. And a big thank you to them for organising a meal after the event as well. I sent some brief notes of the discussions. Obviously, we couldn't capture absolutely everything, but we tried our best, of the sort of discussions that we had. And I'm going to share those in the chat as well. Oh, sorry, that's the wrong link. That's the same link I previously shared. What have I done? I've made a mess. There we are. There you go. That's the proper link. If you want to see a little bit about what we discussed, there it is. We didn't send out any formal evaluation form, but if you have any comments on improvements to the event or the focus of next year's event, please do get in touch, and you can do that by emailing me. So I'm again just going to put my contact details in the chat. Any ideas at all about how we can keep meeting on a face-to-face basis, what that should look like? Does anyone want to share their thoughts about the summer gathering or anything before we move on and introduce our speaker?
No.
I just wanted to welcome Princess, who I think has just joined. Hello there.
Hi, sorry I'm late.
No
Work.
problem. Lovely to have you here. Anyone want to share anything before I move on to our speaker? Oh, I've got one more thing to say. Sorry, this is important and I forgot it. So I've just sent an email. We have sent an email out to our whole network, telling you, I think we mentioned it on the summer gathering, that we are electing a new grassroots trustee to represent grassroots perspective on the results board of trustees. And I'm just going to put a link to that on the chat. So that's just the information that was sent out and should be in your inbox. So the board of trustees give direction to results. It's sort of legally responsible for us, and it's made up of a diverse group of people with different skills and experience. And it includes a grassroots trustee, at least one. Currently got Kush from London on the board, who's elected from this network to sit on the board. And elections to the trustee position, the grassroots trustee position, this year will take place on the next grassroots conference call, so in about a month's time, on Tuesday the 6th of August. So please do consider putting yourself forward for this very important volunteer role. It's a great experience, overseeing the strategic direction of results, ensuring our operational good practice, management of risks potentially to the organisation, and ensuring our sound financial management. No direct experience is necessary, and we estimate that the average trustee spends about 5 hours a month on results business. So the way you would apply for this is to send a short paragraph, which is we're saying up to about 300 words. Please send that to me at naveed.chowdhury@results.org.uk. So that's the same address that I just shared in the chat, explaining why you're interested in the role and what you think you could bring to it. The deadline for that is just before the conference call, Thursday, the 1st of August. And on that call, candidates will need to share that pitch, and then people who are on the call get to vote for their preferred candidate. If you'd like to know a bit more, feel free to contact me, but also you could contact our current board co-chairs, who are called Motunrayo Fagbayi or Nicholas Kroger, or Kush Naker, who's the current grassroots trustee. And all of their email addresses are in the link that I just shared. So now we do get on to finally, I see our guest speaker's been sitting patiently. We're on to the topic for tonight's conversation, which is how are we going to build relationships with these new parliamentarians after Thursday's general election? So last month, some of you'll recall, we heard from Results' senior parliamentary officer on TV, Vinny, who set out how the election is likely to affect our advocacy over the short and medium term. So this month, we're coming back to that topic, but we're going to sort of delve into practically what we're going to do in order to give our advocacy on specific global health and development issues a better chance of success in coming months. That doesn't mean jumping into them now, but it means how do we prep that relationship? How do we do that? And so to help us through this, we're joined by Results' head of parliamentary advocacy, Lucy Drescher, who I think probably a lot of you know already. So Lucy, welcome to you.
Thank you. It's lovely to see everybody. I have to admit, actually, I'm on my phone and I can't see everybody's faces, but it's lovely to hear you all. And it was really lovely to see so many people at the summer gathering. It was really nice, and so lots of faces I hadn't seen for ages, which was really, really nice. So thank you for letting me join you.
Thanks, Lucy. So there are going to be a few people on the call who don't know you. Could you just say a little bit about your role at Results and what your team does?
Of course, yes. So I'm head of the parliamentary team at Results UK, and we are responsible for so all of you engage with parliamentarians at your constituency level in where you're living. We engage with them nationally. So between you and the members of my team, we're engaging parliamentarians from different points of view, the local point of view and the national point of view. And we provide the secretariat, sort of all the administrative and planning support for four all-party groups in Parliament, which are groups of MPs who are interested in an issue. And that's one of our key tools, I would say, to raising things in Parliament, because they are around specific issues: TB, vaccinations, nutrition and education. And it's groups of parliamentarians getting together because they are interested in that issue and they want to raise things around that issue. And as a group, they find it easier, therefore, to meet with ministers, speak to with ministers, make a point, host discussions, that kind of thing. And so we're running that, but we're also, along with you, aiming to persuade, to encourage parliamentarians to become champions for our issues. I think I've been doing some interviews this week, and what I always say is we know we've done a great job when they all talk about it when we haven't prompted them. So when a parliamentarian says something, asks a question, wants to speak in a debate, and we haven't said anything, we know we've done a great job, because that means that they care about the issue and they think it's important and they want to raise it. So that's, we do it from the national point of view, you're doing it from the local point of view. So I think we're working on that jointly to reach all those parliamentarians together. And Vinny is a member of my team, so you've heard from him recently. Just to give you an idea, so I've got people who are working on TB, vaccines, nutrition and education, and they are really just focusing on that issue, trying to get parliamentarians to understand more and interested and wanting to speak in debates and wanting to ask questions and wanting to talk to the minister and wanting to raise things and wanting to vote the right way. So yeah, that's all of our.
Thank you, Lucy. And I can't stress highly enough how or strongly enough how that sort of complementarity of the voice coming from the constituency and having someone to talk to in Parliament, it really works together. And what I heard you saying about champions just then, Lucy, building champions, really sounds quite similar, but in different language to what Pete was saying earlier about a personal commitment. So thank you for that. We're going to start off in the usual way with some pre-arranged questions before we open up to the floor. So I think the first one is from the online group, but I don't know who's going to ask it or where in the country it'll be from. So if you could just say hello and introduce yourself and then ask your question.
Hi, I think it's me actually. I think I've been nominated from the online group this month. So shall I just go ahead and ask?
Please do.
All right. Just bear with me. I had something written down. Sorry about this.
That's all right, don't worry.
Yeah, I had it written down somewhere. Yes, okay. So sorry, it's quite simple actually. So really we wanted to ask that now the election's almost over, what should we be contacting our MPs about?
Okay, so I think that Vinny probably talked to you last month quite a bit about the fact that they will be taking time to set up their offices, get their email addresses, getting themselves established. But I suppose with number one, I'm talking about new MPs. So there's new MPs and there's MPs who are returning, but the new MPs will be taking a long time to getting themselves sorted. And so I think what I definitely suggest is not launching straight into issues, not launching straight into very detailed requests and information. At the moment, it's more about getting to know those new MPs. And if you can contact them talking about, well, to quote Pete, a commitment to eradicating poverty and an interest in the issues around poverty, I think that will be really important. And talking about it from your own personal point of view, why you think that's important, why that is an issue for you, why you think it relates to you as well, because one of the things that we're coming up against a lot of the time is domestic issues dominating and international development issues not really coming up so much because domestic issues are dominating. So therefore, if you can be thinking about how it relates to your life, how you see things in your country maybe that are a problem, and then you think, well, you know how they're even more severe in other countries, or that kind of thing. I don't know, you'd all need to, I guess, I mean, you all have your personal reasons for why you choose to campaign on these issues, but I think the more you make it personal, the more you will start that relationship. So Jill's just talked to us today about Julie Marson and how she's developed that personal relationship. And this is hopefully the beginning of that personal relationship where you talk to them, you tell them why you're interested and why you think it's important that they think about these issues. And if they're new, they have hopefully been thinking about these a little bit, or they have not been thinking about them at all because they've been too busy thinking about the NHS and cost of living and dentists and roads and so many other things that are really important to people day to day who are the constituents. And so it is important for them to hear about these issues, because so many of them then say, oh, well, I just don't hear about that on the doorstep. I just don't hear about that. Whereas if you do actually write to them and raise it to them, it's much harder for them to say they're not hearing about it. And this is really the beginning, I suppose, of what I'm trying to say. I'm hoping that this one action you take by writing to them, contacting them, giving them your personal experience is just the start of getting to know them. It's a different situation if you have a returning MP who you already know, and that would be perhaps a kind of more welcoming them back, saying you'd like to continue working on these things, say that you will have, there are many important things coming up and you planning to contact them again, so it will depend on their situation. If they are a returning MP and it's a new government and they're in that party, then it will still have the message of you've got the chance to bring about these new things, bring about change. If they're in an opposition party, then it's a question of them supporting things from the opposition, and so it's thinking through, it's finding out, so are you talking about a returning MP? What's their situation? Are they in the opposition? Are they in the new government? Whatever. Or have you got a new MP that you need to get to know and you need to start to show them why you're passionate about something? So different situations, and all of you will be in different situations, but this is the beginning of something again, either again or for the first time with a new person. is what I would say.
Thanks, Lucy. So I know we're suggesting that it's about building the relationship and not necessarily the issues. I hope we haven't sidestepped the question about what issues should we be contacting them about, because as Lucy says, this is the start, and therefore we'll come to the issues. We know as results that we have loads of issues. It's about staggering that. Sorry, Lucy, did you want to come in?
No, I was just going to say eradicating poverty.
Eradicating poverty. So the big picture issues rather than the details, I guess, is the way to put it.
Yeah.
Our second question, I think, is coming from Scotland. Is that right?
Yes, you are right. Yes, it's just
Go for it.
I'm off mute. So it's Ricky from Edinburgh. Lucy, thank you ever so much for joining us. And my question is, what happens if our MP just doesn't reply? Because we know they'll be very, very busy early days. What happens if we just don't hear back from them?
I think number one is try not to be disheartened, try not to be discouraged, because as you say, they're really busy. They're setting up their offices, they're sorting out their emails, they haven't got any staff yet, they're starting to try and recruit staff, and they're trying to find their way around Parliament, which isn't easy. So number one, don't be disheartened, and don't see that still as, okay, I've written them one letter, and next time I write to them, I will refer to that letter and say, last time I wrote to you, I raised this. This time I would like to raise this. And you're sort of adding to what you've said at first. You've started off maybe with your personal experience, why you're committed to eradicating poverty, some of the general feelings you have about that, whether there are particular things that are key to that for you. And then you're going to follow up potentially with another letter if you don't hear from them. When we come to our next action that's about writing to your new MP. So I think number one is not to think, okay, they didn't write back to me, that's useless, that isn't successful. It's not necessarily that it isn't a successful technique or that they aren't going to be a responsive MP. It's just potentially that they're in this difficult situation of setting things up and getting sorted, and they may be a bit overwhelmed. So it's sort of trying not to be discouraged, but seeing it as the first step in a process of getting to know that MP is how I would suggest you approach it.
Thanks, Lucy. So we know that for many MPs, the gatekeepers, their staff. If their staff in some cases aren't even ready yet, that's a bit of an issue. But we know, or many of us on this call know, and I hope if you're newer, you'll kind of get the sense that we can be a bit relaxed, but we have to be tenacious. We just keep on coming back, and it will have an impact. Let's move on to our third question, which I think is from Paul. I thought it was from Paul. Helen, you look like you're talking, but you're on mute. Oh, we've got you.
Hello, I'm sorry. I was clicking the wrong thing.
No worries. Hello.
It's a long time since I've done this. Hello, Lucy. Can you suggest...
Hello, lovely to see you again.
Oh, thank you. Can you suggest any good content to get our new MP's attention?
Yes, how to get their attention. Not an easy one, hey? So I guess, I've already talked a bit about being personal in terms of why things matter to you as their constituent, giving any personal stories you have as to what got you interested in these issues, what you think about them. There's that element of being personal. There's also the possibility you could think about trying to be creative, ways in which your letter could stand out, whether you make it look a particular way, or I don't know whether you're into being artistic, but you could think about that. Yeah, I don't know, maybe it doesn't suit everybody. Some people might like that idea of making it look a particular way or putting in pictures. I don't know. I don't know, but you could think of it being sort of attractive, or you could think about, if you're into sort of social media, you could think about trying to do some sort of social media video message for them. That depends. It depends, absolutely. It depends whether you're any good at that. If you're no good at that, stick to the letter, make it personal, and maybe think about I'm trying to think. It depends if you're into drawing or making it look pretty, but I don't know. You might not well be. But I certainly think that personal story. I mean, one of the strengths of all of you, one of the biggest strengths of all of you is that you don't just write something that we've told you to write. You write it in your own way. You say your own personal story, and that is what makes your letters stand out. So I think that is the sort of the number one. But if you are inspired to make it a bit creative, then do. Or if you are really into social media and you want to make a little video, then do. It's just sort of, I guess anything that you like doing that you think could make your letter seem different to other people's is kind of, I think, really helpful. Or if you heard someone on a call who was from a country that you've heard about and worked on, and they said something inspiring, you can mention that. Or it's sort of it's trying to think of ways that makes it a little bit different to your average letter, I guess. But that would be my suggestion. But I'm not saying that's easy. I'm just saying that's something to think about, to make it
a challenge.
It's a challenge. Absolutely. Take it as a challenge. Absolutely. Trying to make your letter stand out from others, definitely, I think is one way to but again, telling them you're there, showing them that international development is important to some of their constituents, and seeing it as the beginning, that you then will follow it up with another creative letter or another creative opportunity.
Thank you, Lucy. So we've said, don't jump to a particular issue, but if the thing that drew you into this and it's your stories about a particular thing, don't be shy of saying it. That's the thing. And Jill, thank you for mentioning craftivism. We did share a link in the action materials, which we sent out to you just a couple of days ago. Some of you might remember Sarah Corbett from the Craftivist Collective, who's cross stitches letters, or sort of those, not cross stitches, whatever she does. She doesn't crochet them. Anyway, she does stitched messages on things like handkerchiefs to send to MPs and decision makers, which is a really clever way of standing out. So if craft is your thing, you might want to do something a little bit more off the wall. But the handwritten letter or the email, that's still the bread and butter for most of us, I think. Lucy, thank you so much for that starting point to the conversation. We heard from Vinny last time about some of the pressures on MPs, so we might want to delve more into that. But at the same time as recognising those, I think we don't want to let them off the hook, and we want to start as we mean to go on and hold those newly elected representatives to account. So I hope all of this will come up in the discussion. And so now let's open to questions from the floor. As always, please just unmute, ask your question, put it in the Zoom chat box, or you can text your question to me if you prefer to use that method. And my number is 07906 662 571, and I've just put that in the chat box as well. So let's just open it up. Who would like to go first?
Can I go first?
Please do, Pete.
Yeah. So is it appropriate on first contact to actually get to know the staff as well as the MP, to ask a simple question like, who can we get in touch with if you're busy? Who's going to be answering emails and letters if not you? Is it a good idea to actually say hello to them as well, as this relationship is going to last at least 4 years?
I don't think it can do any harm at all. I think that, it's, if they have already started to employ someone, then you're acknowledging that person. And as you say, they will be a key part of helping to respond to you, and getting to know them will really help. If they haven't got anyone yet, then hopefully they'll just say, as soon as we've got someone in post, we'd like to put, link up again as well. So I personally would say it's a good idea, because it acknowledges the fact that their staff are important, aren't they? Jill, I think you've got something as well.
Yeah, I was going to say, don't give up, because Robert Halfon was the new MP in Harlow many years ago, 17 years ago, I think he's been there. And I sent an email to him 20 minutes after he was declared an MP, inviting him to come give the prizes out at a special school football tournament, and he accepted. So if you get in quick, it can be a good thing. He was a new MP.
Nice,
Absolutely.
I don't know who was next, Kathy or Tony.
I'll go, Tony, if that's okay. I just wanted to ask about some of our newly recruited people that wanted to be involved in Edinburgh are students, and they are not always registered to vote in this country. Now, that's maybe why they're not as active about getting in touch before the election, but what's your view about people whose status is not, I mean, they are constituents, but I would want to encourage them to feel that they are also able to make their voices heard, even if they're only here for a year or whatever. So what's your feeling about people who haven't really got an established position in the community of where the constituency where they're living? Lucy?
I hope that the MP would see them. So you're talking about young people who are living in Edinburgh.
Not always young. Not always young.
Okay, but people who are living in Edinburgh at the moment, but may well go back to another part of the country, yeah?
Or another country in the world.
Another country in the world. So they're foreign students as well, then international students, okay. I would hope that your MP would be interested in hearing from anyone who is living in their constituency and has got potential to be supportive and have things to say. So I would say they should always still write, and they should always have a point of view, and they should always ask to be represented, even if they can't vote at the moment, because they're still living there and they're still a constituent, even if they can't vote at the moment, aren't they? So they've still got a right to a voice, and they still have something to say about where they're living. So I would say that your MP should listen and should be willing to respond.
I totally agree, and I hope that that is what we'll be able to communicate to them when we're talking with them about the relationship that they can build.
Thanks, Kathy. That's a really important question. Tony, you're next.
Yeah, thank you. I shan't take too long to ask my follow-up question now. So you were talking about, obviously, new MPs are going to be terribly busy initially and quite preoccupied. So although it's important to you're saying to sort of contact them promptly, is there any possible way of saying, actually, is there a sort of a slightly sweet spot later on, a month down the line or 6 weeks or something, that actually might be a good opportunity to contact them when they're more established, or not?
I think that time, yes, does exist, but I'm not sure I would say don't do it now, because that time exists. I think that potentially now an introduction, and in 6 weeks we may well have an action about something specific that we want to write to them about. So, that you'll have your August action and then your September action, and they may, one at least of others, maybe on something quite specific, like vaccinations or something like that. And so, if you've done your initial introductory letter now, potentially your next one hits that sweet spot.
Okay.
And so, if you don't hear from them in response to the introduction one, maybe hopefully you might hear from them in that sweet spot. I mean, you're absolutely right. You sort of hope within a period of time, they've got some staff, they've got a good email, they've actually got a desk, and they actually know their way around the building in Parliament. and they're actually starting to feel on top of things slightly, that would be a good moment. I also think MPs at the beginning aren't always clear on what issues are going to be important to them and what they can work on. And you can be part of helping them to find that out. It's certainly, there's a couple of MPs we've worked with. So one who, an SNP MP who I've worked with, who I met him when he was really new in Parliament. I went to an event, said to him, "Oh, we're going on a trip. I see you like work, you're interested in Tanzania. This trip is to Tanzania." Came on the trip to Tanzania, started working on nutrition, got really passionate about nutrition and helped us to set up one of our party groups. And then when he couldn't do it anymore, he found another MP who could work with it, who became passionate. So, you know, catching them early on, but I still think I wouldn't discourage you from introducing yourself now.
Thank you, Lucy. It's a great question there. And I think that ripple effect, or the butterfly's wing, whichever analogy you want to choose, you know, it kind of can start now and we just don't know. So yeah, and we're coming towards the end of our time, but I see that Richard has his hand up. Hi, Richard.
Thanks very much, Lucy, for all that information. Just back to the letters, I think we've probably discussed all this before. An email is very easy for us to write. Is it better to do that, or are they more likely to read a handwritten letter, a typed letter? What would you advise?
There probably isn't a right answer to this, but yeah, I think handwritten and you know, physical letters probably stand out more, but because they probably get fewer of them and they probably get more emails. But I'm not saying that's the right answer, but potentially attracts more attention. It also depends whether you can actually find out an email address and whether there's just there is already set up a written address. You know, if they've got a postal address because the party has a postal address in that constituency or whatever, that might be easier to find out at the beginning as well. So I guess what I'm saying is no right answer, but nowadays I think handwritten letters probably stand out more.
Easy, but
that's my personal opinion.
Thank you.
But what do you think? What do you think, Richard? Do you?
Oh, I'm sure paper, a hard copy, as we used to call it, is probably better. Either handwritten or typed is better than an email. Though of course, email is much easier, but a bit more effort to probably get more results.
Yes, I think so too.
So
very much depends what you can do and what you want to do, though. So there's ways of making all of them work. Just going back to Kathy's question, I've just noticed Abbas has written in the chat, referring. So it's not just about students; it's also about asylum seekers and anyone else who's in the constituency who have the right to engage in politics. So thanks for reminding us about that, Abbas. Speaking from the perspective of the City of Sanctuary ambassador.
And just Naveed, just thinking in terms of asylum seekers and people, we have a more recent member of staff who's the daughter of asylum seekers, and she's very active now in politics and very interested in it. So an MP would be wrong to dismiss people, wrong to actually not listen if you live in their area and you have things to say, that they would be wrong to ignore. Personally, I think.
Thank you. Look, we've come to time. I'm just going to put a link in the chat to our usual action materials, but that was what was sent to you in the usual way by email. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. As always, we've not had enough time to answer everything. You know, there's probably lots of questions, but we have to stop. Thank you, Lucy, for sharing your perspective on how we're going to approach a very new look Westminster. I'm just reminded by Vinny last month, who said we could have hundreds and hundreds of new MPs this time. If yours was one of them, then, you know, get stuck in there. Next month, as Lucy said, we hope to come back to raising a specific development issue in our advocacy. And hopefully by that time, some kind of stability will have returned to the business of government. But because of all of this instability, because of where we are on the issues that we are still tracking behind the scenes, we don't quite know what that is yet. So I can't tell you it will be X. I will know in a couple of weeks' time, and then we'll rush to get the action materials out. as always, we'll post a recording of this evening's call on our website, but for now we need to finish this call. So massive thank you to you, Lucy, and to everybody for being with us. And thank you, Atch, for your thank you. And the next grassroots conference call, as I said, will be on the first Tuesday of August. That's Tuesday, the 6th of August, 8 p.m., where we'll also try and make time for that grassroots trustee election. For now, if you're not staying for our informal chat, but please do if you can, enjoy the rest of your evenings.